There are many possible universes, many possible meanings floating through us. We are not solitary subjects in a meaningless universe upon which we can...
Hi everyone, welcome to this YouTube channel. My name is Levi Cosijn, and in this video I want to talk about the north and south node of the moon, mainly from an astronomical perspective. Astrology is deriving meaning from astronomical phenomena, and the north and south node of the moon, or in Vedic astrology referred to as Rahu and Ketu, are such important points to examine that I think it's worthwhile going into a little deeper what they represent, how they are formed, and so on. And also in light of the recent partial lunar eclipse that occurred on July 5th in the tropical sign of Sagittarius, right? We're doing tropical astrology here. And lunar eclipses always occur during full moons, right? Here we have the sun in Cancer at 1337 and the moon opposite for 180 degrees away at 1337 of tropical Capricorn. And in this case, the south node was close enough to the full moon, creating a lunar eclipse. Now, before I go on with this, I want to mention I'm teaching a course on Rahu and Ketu, the north and south node of the moon, on Wednesday evenings. It's an 8-week online course that already started last week, but if you're interested, you can still enroll. We thoroughly go into what the nodes represent on an astrological level. Okay, so all possible combinations are being addressed. And in that course, I'm also touching on some of the important, or the most important rather, divisional charts, or Vargas, which are mainly used in Vedic astrology, also in Hellenistic and Western astrology, but to a lesser extent. So if you're interested, you can go to my website and find some information there. Also want to mention I co-authored a book, Astrology Explained, Ancient Principles for the Modern Mind, which you can also find on my website, levicosijn.com. Okay, so let's dive in. So let's explain how the nodes are formed. What are the nodes? The Rahu and Ketu, the north and south node of the moon, or the ascending or descending node, astronomically speaking. So this is the sun. This is, the earth going around the sun. Heliocentrically, it's the path of the earth going around the sun. Geocentrically, it's the apparent path that the sun makes around the earth, which is the same thing, right? We have the moon revolving around the earth, right? One revolution per month. So the moon spends half of its time in the north, right, in the northern ecliptic hemisphere, and half of its time in the southern ecliptic hemisphere, and crosses the ecliptic twice. Okay, it crosses it because the path of the moon, or the orbital plane of the moon, is at a 5-degree angle, but it's a little more with respect to the ecliptic. Okay, so that's why they're able to intersect. This is the ecliptic, this is the plane of the moon, so they're inclined at a 5-degree angle, so they're able to intersect. And this is where the Rahu and Ketu, or the nodes, are formed. Now, whenever the moon travels from the northern ecliptic hemisphere to the southern ecliptic hemisphere and crosses the ecliptic, this is where Ketu is being formed, or the descending node, right? So in that sense, astrologically, we say, we let go of certain things. It's where the sun goes over, or, under that kind of horizon. And so whenever the moon travels from the southern to the northern ecliptic hemisphere and crosses the ecliptic, this is where Rahu, or the ascending node, is being formed. And Rahu shows where we're in need of development, where we need to put our focus, our consciousness, in order to evolve our consciousness. Now let's say that there would be no angle between the two planes, right? Then we would have 2 eclipses per month, right? Whenever we have Earth, Moon, Sun, which is always during a new moon, right? When the moon is between the Earth and the Sun, there would be an eclipse happening, a solar eclipse happening, right? Solar eclipses always occur when a new moon happens. And then the lunar eclipse would happen also once a month. This is when the moon is on the opposite side here of the Earth during a full moon, right? This would actually occur when there would be no, angle between the two planes, all right? Another graph to make it more clear. This is the path of the Earth going around the sun. Right here, we also see this inclination is 5 degrees. It's actually a little more. Here we see that the moon is too low, and here we see that the moon is too high. So what does that mean? A solar eclipse happens during a new moon, right? This is when the moon obstructs the rays of the sun, right? When the moon is in front of the sun. And so the moon is going to cast a shadow. But when the moon is too high up, right, when it's too far removed from the plane, ecliptic plane, then we see that its shadow misses the Earth. So no solar eclipse is happening. Same for a full moon. This is, the moon, the Earth, and the sun. This is a full moon. So when the moon is too low, in this case, we see that the shadow of the Earth misses the moon. So eclipses happen when the moon casts a shadow on the Earth, or the Earth casts a shadow on the moon. And here in this configuration, this is not happening. Same for the other side here. We see the sun, moon, Earth, right? So we have a new moon, but the moon is too low. So the shadow of the moon misses the Earth. And here we have the shadow of the Earth during this full moon. So sun, Earth, moon. So we have a full moon, but the moon is too high. So the shadow of the Earth, which comes from the sun, obviously, is missing the moon. And so there's no lunar eclipse happening in this case. So when we connect those nodes, right, those as a line, we see that it doesn't really point to the sun, right? Here also, it doesn't point to the sun. When we look at this configuration, or both configurations, we see, and which is where the actual eclipses, or here it shows the eclipses happening. Here we see the new moon, so sun, moon, and Earth, right, aligned in a straight line, so zigzaggy. But we see that the moon is perfectly aligned or placed so that its shadow doesn't miss the Earth, right? Its shadow is covering the Earth. So here you see the shadow. A solar eclipse happens when, so the moon is obstructing the rays of the sun. But of course, the shadow of the moon is not big enough to cover the whole planet, right? The entire planet. So it looks like the eclipse is traveling. And we know that the complete shadow of the moon onto the Earth is about 270 kilometers wide. So it's a diameter of 270 kilometers, which is, of course, way smaller than the size of the Earth, right? So that's why we can see the solar eclipse from all places on Earth. For lunar eclipses, it's different, right? Here we see during a full moon again, so we have the sun, Earth, and the moon, and the shadow of the Earth is covering the moon. So the moon lies in the shadow of the Earth, and thus creating a solar eclipse, and a lunar eclipse, excuse me. And so lunar eclipses we can see from every place on Earth. Of course, you have to be on the night side to see a lunar eclipse, right? So, but you can see it from all places on the night side of the Earth. Okay, so here we see again a straight line. So we have Earth, moon, sun, and we also see the two nodes when we connect them in a line pointing to the sun. Here also we put the nodes in one line, they're also pointing to the sun. So this is exactly where the alignment happens and where the eclipses occur. Now eclipses come in pairs, right? So we can have a solar eclipse, then 2 weeks later it's going to be a lunar eclipse, or vice versa. Usually we have 4 eclipses per year, and this is because the path of the moon, the orbital plane of the moon, keeps about the same direction in space. And that's why, we often have 4 eclipses per year. So here we would have like a lunar eclipse, then 2 weeks later we'd have a solar eclipse, and then here again a lunar eclipse, and then 2 weeks later a solar eclipse. All right. And then to go back, when the moon is on the ecliptic, it has 0 latitude, right? It's at 0 degrees latitude. Latitude means the distance north or south from the ecliptic. So when the moon is on the ecliptic, it has 0 degrees latitude. Of course, the sun is, by definition, has 0 degrees latitude, right? Because it is the ecliptic. And so, but there's a difference between the mean node and the true node. I'm not going to elaborate on this too much here, but the mean node shows, the average speed of the moon taken over, long periods of time. And the true node has to do with, the fact that the moon is actually on the ecliptic, but there's also some calculations to be made for when the moon is not on the ecliptic, right? That's the whole point. So we know that the nodes are formed by the moon intersecting the ecliptic, but all the time in between, because the path of the moon is so erratic, and it jumps up and down. It's very difficult to actually know where the path of the moon is. So it's, all these calculations are not considered super accurate. So sometimes, when your north or south node is at 29 degrees of a sign, depending on you use the mean node calculations or true node calculations, it could be falling in a different sign, right? So regarding this, it's not always super accurate. Okay, so just so you know. You know that there was a south node eclipse in the sign of Sagittarius. So whenever you have personal planets within the last degrees of the dual signs, right, especially Sagittarius and Gemini, this would be important, right? These eclipses would play a significant role concerning that planet. So when you have your sun or Atmakaraka or the moon on these places, then regarding whatever moon represents as a natural indicator in terms of your emotional development and so on, your desires, but also as a house lord, these things would be under influence of this eclipse. And so eclipses are always about transformation, about radical changes often, or change of course, because the nodes always go into the opposite direction of the direct planets, right? So, often, sometimes they can go direct and then they become really powerful as well, but generally they go retrograde. So they're about rebellion, change, karmic change, we say, radical change. And so things can change in respect to whatever they influence, right? It's going to be the sign, but also the planets. So whenever you have any personal planet, right, any of the traditional planets onto these degrees, then this last 2 weeks would be, and the coming months also, would indicate change regarding those things. Okay, and in the coming 18 months, there are going to be eclipses in the Capricorn, in the Sagittarius Gemini axis. So a lot of changes for people with prominent Sagittarius, prominent Gemini, but also here Pisces and Virgo are in square to that, which is also always an important aspect to consider as well. Okay, so this was a little information about the north and south node of the moon. If you want to learn more, you can join the classes. I will be teaching other Rahu and Ketu classes in the future as well. So welcome. Okay, talk to you soon.
There are
Bye.
many possible universes, many possible meanings floating through us. We are not solitary subjects in a meaningless universe upon which we can and must impose our egocentric will. Empty vessels, as it were, on automatic